They already changed the locks. That was the sentence waiting for me. When I stepped off the elevator at 11:40 p.m. Not hello. Not welcome home. Just that. My younger brother said it quietly from the end of the hallway, while holding my overnight bag like it belonged to somebody else. For a second, I honestly thought I had walked onto the wrong floor. Then I saw my key bent in half on the console table. And I understood. If you're here with me, settle in. Maybe grab something to drink before this gets heavier. Because the worst part wasn't the lock. It was the fact that everyone in my family already knew about it except me. My name is Claire Holloway. I'm 34 years old. And 3 nights ago, my mother tried to remove me from the penthouse I had been paying for since I was 28. Quietly. Like rearranging furniture. I didn't scream. People always expect that part. But I learned a long time ago that loud people usually lose control first. So I just stood there in my coat while rainwater dripped onto the marble floor. Where's Ava? That was all I asked. My daughter was 8. And nobody answered immediately. That silence told me more than words could. Then my mother appeared from the dining room holding a wine glass. Calm. Prepared. Ava's with Daniel for the weekend, she said. My ex-husband. The man who forgot birthdays and once left our daughter sitting outside dance practice for 2 hours because he lost track of time. I looked at my brother again. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I noticed something else. The hallway artwork was gone. Mine. The framed photos. The painting Ava made in 2nd grade. Even the antique mirror from my grandmother's house. Missing. Like someone had already started redecorating my life. You had no right, I said softly. My mother tilted her head. We held a family discussion. Not discussion. Not conversation. A verdict. Then she smiled into her wine glass and said the sentence that changed everything. You've become unstable lately, Claire. And suddenly, I realized this had been planned long before tonight. 3 years earlier, that penthouse had felt impossible. 42 floors above downtown Seattle. Glass walls. Rain against the windows at night. A kitchen I could barely afford to furnish after signing the papers. But it was mine. Every impossible inch of it. I bought it 6 months after my tech company sold. Not millions. Not private jet money. Just enough to finally breathe without checking my bank account first. Enough to give Ava stability after the divorce. That mattered more. Because Daniel loved freedom more than responsibility. And my mother loved control more than peace. At first, she only came by to help. That was the word she used for everything. Help. Help with Ava. Help decorating. Help organizing the pantry because the flow felt chaotic. If you've ever lived with someone who slowly replaces your life while smiling, you already know where this goes. My mother moved into the guest suite after her condo flooded during winter storms. Temporary. Dangerous word. My brother Evan followed 2 months later after another failed business idea collapsed. Then my cousin Naomi arrived for just a few weeks while apartment hunting. Weeks became seasons. Seasons became assumptions. And slowly, my home stopped behaving like mine. Start small. The coffee machine moved. Then the dining schedule. Then suddenly guests were invited over without asking me. One night I came home from work and found strangers drinking wine in my living room, while my mother introduced me as if I were visiting. This is Claire, she said brightly. She works far too much. Works. Not owns. I noticed that. But I ignored it. Because exhaustion makes you negotiate with disrespect. Especially when a child needs stability. Ava hated conflict. If voices got sharp, she would disappear quietly into her room and draw constellations on sticky notes. That child could feel tension through walls. So I kept the peace. That was my mistake. People mistake calm women for women without limits. About 6 months before the locks changed, my mother started saying something constantly. This apartment should stay in the family. First it sounded sentimental. Then strategic. Then one night at dinner, Naomi laughed and said, honestly, if Claire ever burned out, none of us could afford this place without her. Everyone laughed. Except my mother. She looked directly at me and said quietly, well, there are ways to arrange things properly. That was the first moment I felt it. Not concern. Not family closeness. Planning. And I didn't understand yet how long they'd already been planning it. The week before the locks changed, My mother started behaving unusually cheerful. That should have warned me. Manipulative people get gentler right before they take something. Tuesday night she cooked salmon. Candles lit. Soft jazz playing through the speakers. Too perfect. Ava sat beside me coloring quietly while Naomi scrolled luxury furniture online at the table. Then my mother placed her wine glass down carefully. "I've been thinking," she said. Everyone else got quiet immediately. That told me this conversation had already happened without me. "You work too hard, Claire." There it was. The opening line. I kept cutting Ava's food. "I'm fine." "No," my mother said softly. "You're exhausted all the time. You forget things lately." I looked up slowly. "What things?" A pause. Just long enough to create doubt. Then Evan spoke without looking at me. "You left the stove on last week." "I didn't." Naomi added quickly. "And Ava said you missed pickup twice this month." I missed it once. Because my investor meeting ran late. And I arranged coverage beforehand. But suddenly the table felt tilted against me. That's how pressure works in families. Not one accusation. Several small ones layered carefully together. My mother reached across the table and touched my wrist. "We're worried about you." There's something terrifying about hearing concern weaponized. Ava stopped coloring. Children always stop coloring when adults start lying calmly. "I'm doing my best," I said quietly. "We know," my mother replied. "But maybe you shouldn't carry everything alone anymore." That sentence stayed with me afterward. Because it sounded supportive. But it wasn't. It was positioning. That's when I noticed Naomi smiling faintly into her water glass. Like someone watching phase 1 succeed. Later that night, Ava asked me something while I tucked her in. "Why does Grandma keep asking if we'd ever move away?" I stopped. "Did she ask you that?" A small nod. "What did you say?" "That home is wherever you are." That nearly broke me. I kissed her forehead and turned off the lamp. But before she fell asleep, she whispered one more thing into the dark. "Mom." "Yeah." "Grandma said stressed people forget what belongs to them sometimes." And suddenly, I realized my daughter had been pulled into something far uglier than family tension. The morning the locks changed, I was in San Francisco finalizing a merger deal. 12 straight hours of negotiations. My phone kept vibrating face down beside my laptop. 6 missed calls from my mother. 3 from Evan. 1 from Daniel. That one bothered me. Daniel never called unless something was wrong. But I couldn't step away. Millions were moving across contracts by the hour. And people who've never worked under that kind of pressure think you can just answer phones whenever you want. You can't. Not always. By the time my driver dropped me home near midnight, rain was hitting the windows sideways. Seattle looked drowned. And my life looked staged. Because the moment I entered the penthouse, nothing felt accidental. The art missing. The hallway cleared. Fresh flowers on the dining table. My mother dressed like company was coming. Then came the sentence. "You've become unstable lately." Not angry. Clinical. Prepared. Like she'd practiced it beforehand. I took off my coat slowly. "What exactly are you implying?" Nobody answered immediately. Then Naomi finally spoke. "We think you need rest." We. That word again. Family manipulation always hides inside plural language. We think. We decided. We agreed. Until suddenly your own life sounds committee-owned. "You sent Ava away without asking me." "She's safe," my mother replied. "That's not the point. You frightened her last week." My stomach tightened. "When?" "You were yelling." I stared at her. I had not yelled once in that apartment. Not once. Then Evan spoke quietly. "You scared all of us, Claire." That was the moment I understood. Not conflict. Narrative. They were building one. A version of me. Overworked. Erratic. Emotionally unstable. And suddenly every exhausted moment from the past year rearranged itself differently in my mind. The forgotten meeting reminder. The missing prescription refill. The calendar appointments I supposedly overlooked. Had those really been mistakes? Or had someone been manufacturing evidence around me slowly? Fear's still here. Stay with me. Because what I found the next morning inside my own kitchen drawer changed everything. And it proved this wasn't about concern. It was about ownership. I barely slept that night. Not because of the locks. Because of the performance, every conversation felt rehearsed, every expression timed. And the strangest part? Nobody seemed nervous. People only stay calm during betrayal when they believe they've already won. At 5:30 a.m. the apartment was quiet. Rain against glass, coffee machine humming softly. I walked into the kitchen barefoot and opened the junk drawer looking for scissors. That's when I saw the folder. Cream-colored, unlabeled, half hidden beneath takeout menus. Something told me not to touch it. I opened it anyway. Inside were printed emails, property documents, bank consultations, and one highlighted sentence that made my hands go cold. In the event Claire becomes medically compromised, temporary financial oversight could transfer to designated family members. My mother's name was handwritten beside it, along with Evan's. I sat down slowly. There was more. Pages from private consultations with an attorney, notes about conservatorship laws, evaluation procedures, even suggested phrases. She appears emotionally exhausted. Paranoia regarding family intentions. Work instability. They had been building a case. Quietly. Methodically. For months. And then I found the worst page. A draft custody proposal involving Ava. Temporary guardianship. Signed by Daniel. Not finalized. But discussed. I didn't cry. Shock that deep becomes stillness first. Then I noticed another sheet clipped underneath. A handwritten checklist. Step 1. Establish instability. Step 2. Isolate financially. Step 3. Transition property authority. Transition property authority. That's what they call taking my life. I photographed everything. Every page. Every signature. Then carefully placed the folder back exactly where I found it. When my mother entered the kitchen 20 minutes later, she smiled softly. "You're up early." "So are you." She poured coffee calmly. "You gave us quite a scare yesterday." There it was again. The script. I looked at her across the marble counter. And for the first time in my life, I stopped seeing my mother. I saw strategy. I saw fear. I saw a woman so terrified of losing comfort that she built an entire story where her daughter became dangerous. Then she said something that confirmed everything. "We're only trying to protect what's best for Ava. Not me. The apartment. The lifestyle. The access. That's what this had always been about." And suddenly, I knew exactly how I was going to end it. I called the lawyer from my car 2 hours later. Not a family attorney. Not someone gentle. A litigation specialist named Helena Price. The kind of woman who sounded expensive before introducing herself. I told her everything. The locks. The custody draft. The conservatorship notes. The property documents. Then I stayed quiet. Waiting. Finally she asked one question. "Who legally owns the penthouse?" "I do." "Only you?" "Yes." Another pause. "And who has medical authority over you?" "No one." Her tone changed instantly. "Then your family has confused access with entitlement." I leaned back against the headrest and closed my eyes, because that sentence felt like oxygen. Helena moved quickly. Very quickly. By afternoon, formal notices were drafted. Temporary access restrictions. Property removal deadlines. Legal warnings regarding fraudulent competency claims. Everything clean. Professional. Precise. That mattered. People like my mother survive through emotional chaos. Paperwork terrifies them. Especially when witnesses exist. And witnesses were exactly what I planned to create. Because 2 days later, my mother was hosting a charity dinner in the penthouse. 30 guests. Business owners. Neighbors. People she desperately needed admiration from. That's when I decided. Not revenge. Correction. Quiet. Complete. Impossible to argue with. The next 48 hours became theater. I smiled. Agreed politely. Complimented flower arrangements. Listened to Naomi discuss centerpiece colors for an apartment she secretly believed was becoming hers. Meanwhile, Helena prepared everything. Documents. Evidence packets. Formal filings. And one additional recommendation. Install cameras immediately. So I did. What those cameras caught that final night still makes my stomach tighten. At 1:13 a.m., my mother entered my office carrying the same cream folder. She sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began searching financial accounts. Not hiding it. Not sneaking. Comfortable. Certain. Like the apartment already belonged to her. Then she took out her phone and quietly said, "By next month, everything should finally be under family management." Family management. I watched the footage 3 times. Not because I doubted it. Because certainty changes people. And I needed to become very certain before what came next. If you're still with me now, the dinner is where everything finally collapsed. Not loudly. That would have been easier. No. It collapsed politely. In front of crystal glasses and candlelight. Saturday night arrived warm and clear. The city lights below the penthouse looked unreal. Golden. Distant. 32 guests filled the living room holding champagne and talking too loudly over jazz music. My mother floated through them beautifully. Elegant dress. Perfect smile. The queen of a kingdom she believed she'd secured. Daniel came too. That surprised me. Until I realized he looked nervous the entire evening. Good. Fear meant conscience had finally entered the room. Ava stayed with my assistant downstairs. Far away from what was about to happen. Around 9 my mother tapped her glass gently. The room quieted. "I just want to thank everyone," she said warmly. "Family is everything to me." I almost smiled. There was that word again. Family. Used like ownership papers. Then she invited Naomi forward to discuss exciting transitions ahead. Transitions. Interesting choice. I waited until the applause ended. Then I stood. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just calm enough to make everyone uncomfortable. "Actually," I said softly, "before transitions are discussed, I think a few documents need clarification." My mother's smile froze slightly. Only slightly. I walked to the dining table carrying a black portfolio. The room watched immediately. Because people can sense tension long before understanding it. I opened the portfolio slowly. Inside. Property records. Camera stills. Legal notices. Photographs of the conservatorship drafts. I placed the first paper down. "The penthouse deed," I said quietly. "One owner." Silence. Then the second. Recorded attempts to establish false financial oversight. My mother stopped breathing normally. I noticed that. Then the third. Security images from my office. Time-stamped. Her face illuminated by my computer screen at 1:13 a.m. Nobody spoke. Crystal silence. Daniel looked physically ill. Naomi went pale first. Evan immediately stared at the floor. Cowards always recognize the ending before manipulators do. Finally my mother laughed softly. Too softly. "This is private family business." "No," I said. "You made it legal business when you tried building a competency case against me." That changed the room. You could feel it. Guests shifting internally away from her. Like tides reversing. Then I laid down the final document. Removal notices. Legally filed. Effective immediately. And suddenly, the woman who controlled every room for years realized this room no longer belonged to her. "You're humiliating me." My mother said it so quietly. I almost didn't hear her. Not apologizing. Not denying. Just humiliated. That told me everything. Because people who feel guilt worry about harm. People who feel shame worry about witnesses. The room stayed painfully still. Nobody touched their drinks anymore. Daniel rubbed his forehead like he wanted to disappear. Naomi silently picked up her purse. And my mother, for the first time in my entire life, looked small. Not powerless. Just exposed.